This is wrestling's greatest moment.
Hey now, wrestling fans. Once upon a time, professional wrestling nearly bottomed out with attendance down, promoters fighting one another, world champions coming out of the woodwork, and fans turning to other entertainment mediums such as roller derby and film. Add World War II to the mix, and the industry looked fragile at best. Yet wrestling didn't die, and one unlikely heel may have helped keep wrestling strong enough to seize its biggest opportunity when it arrived: television. Sit back as Wrestling's Greatest Moments looks at wrestler Wild Bill Longson, who may not have saved professional wrestling, but someone who kept it thriving when its very survival was at stake. Before we get started though, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single video. Dark days everywhere. Wrestling entered the 1930s riding a wave of popularity, but by the middle of the decade, the boom had crested for various reasons. Promoters sued each other, multiple wrestlers claimed versions of the World Heavyweight Championship, disgruntled insiders exposed the business to newspapers, whether it was overexposure, internal politics, or simply wrestling's cyclical nature, the result was the same: massive decline. Attendance at matches was down by 1/3 in most cities. Business in major hubs like Chicago and Philadelphia was off as much as 75%. New York is altogether dead. Things were a mess, and promoters didn't know what to do. Everywhere you looked, business was slumping. By the end of the 1930s, promoters desperate for paying customers were willing to try anything. They filled rings with mud, fish and feathers and molasses, and set wrestlers to work in them. While some skeptics scoff that wrestling is a cyclical business, history has repeatedly shown that the industry experiences boom and bust periods. The era around World War II was one such downturn, with historian Tim Hornbaker writing, "For a number of reasons, the popularity of grappling went into a tailspin in the late 1930s and remained lackluster through North America during World War II, with the exception of a few local divisions. Things were about to get worse. A world at war. Then came World War II. Wrestling was already in bad shape when war broke out in Europe in 1939. When the United States entered the war in 1949, things worsened. World War II affected everyone, including pro wrestling, as wrestlers were drafted into service or helped the government train soldiers in self-defense or conditioning. As Tim Hornbaker writes in Capital Wrestling, the war forced many changes in professional wrestling and seized scores of athletes for duty. Ruffy Silverstein, the former NCAA and Big Ten champion, was rumored to have been in line to win the National Wrestling Association title when he was called into the U.S. Army. Lou Thesz was in the prime of his wrestling life, and had he not been called to service, there is no doubt he would have made an impact. The war shook up the wrestling scene. The business wasn't dead, but it was extremely vulnerable, with its existence hanging by the proverbial thread. One man would change that, revolutionizing the way that wrestlers played heels. Enter Wild Bill Longson. Born Willard Rowe in 1906, Longson brought legitimate credentials to the ring: an AAU championship in amateur wrestling, and a background in boxing. Standing 6'2" and billed at 235 pounds, he looked every bit the champion. However, what made Longson special wasn't just his athleticism, it was his ability to draw. Longson embraced the role of an arrogant heel. He bent the rules. He punished opponents. He used the piledriver as a feared finisher. Some fans paid to see him win, but even more paid to see him lose. That nearly ended though in 1937, after Longson was seriously injured during a match. Wild Bill was wrestling Man Mountain Dean when he suffered a broken back, with doctors telling him his wrestling career was over. Longson said otherwise. With the help of promoter Joe Malkovich, who kept Bill financially afloat while he recovered, Longson toughed out his rehabilitation, returning to the ring as the masked wrestler, the Purple Shadow. Longson eventually ditched the mask, working his way up to one of wrestling's biggest prizes. Bill's remarkable comeback continued after relocating to the St. Louis area, where on February 19, 1942, at the Municipal Auditorium in St. Louis, Longson beat Sandor Zazbo and won the World Heavyweight title, recognized by the National Wrestling Association. With the world at war, Longson became something professional wrestling desperately needed: a dependable, bankable champion, and a villain that fans could channel their real-world frustrations toward. Though he is sometimes described as the first true heel world champion, this is a claim complicated by earlier figures such as Evan Strangler Lewis and his namesake, Ed Strangler Lewis. Nonetheless, Longson elevated the archetype. He didn't just antagonize audiences, he cultivated new ways to draw them, turning resentment into revenue. The business case for Longson. In his memoir, Hooker, iconic world champion Lou Thesz makes the case that Longson pretty much single-handedly kept the wrestling business alive during the World War II years. That may be overstating things, but Longson's numbers don't lie. In his look at the origins of the National Wrestling Alliance, Tim Hornbaker describes Longson's success. Primarily a heel, Longson drew better than 570,000 fans over his first 58 appearances in St. Louis between 1941 and 1944, was traveling at least 80,000 miles a year, and reportedly earning $50,000 annually. In an era when many territories were struggling, Longson was the real deal. Longson wrestled many of the top names of that era, including Yvonne Robert, Lou Thesz, and Whipper Billy Watson. He held the World Championship 3 times and gave promoters consistency, credibility, and more importantly, the gates they needed to keep the wrestling business viable. The final piece to the puzzle: television. Bill Longson provided something that wrestling desperately needed during World War II, a lifeline to keep it going until the war ended and something magical happened: the proliferation of television in American homes. When television began spreading into American homes in the late 1940s, professional wrestling wasn't rebuilding from the ruins. It had structure, and it had recognized champions and stars. It had territories, and it had performers who kept audiences engaged during the war years. The industry that television embraced wasn't a corpse revived, it was a business that had endured, and in some places continued to thrive. Had wrestling completely collapsed during the war, television might never have adopted it so quickly or so widely. Instead, the sport was ready. Promoters like Sam Muchnick would later capitalize on that momentum. The National Wrestling Alliance would formalize structure, building a powerful wrestling empire. Television would amplify what already existed. Longson didn't create the TV boom, but he helped ensure there was something worth broadcasting when it finally happened. Final years and legacy. Bill Longson eventually scaled back his ring career, working with Sam Muchnick in St. Louis as part owner and as a behind-the-scenes presence. He even helped elevate future stars like Gene Kiniski, putting him over in his final appearances. While Bill Longson passed away on December 12, 1982 at age 76. His contributions to the industry led to his induction into multiple wrestling halls of fame, including the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame, and the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. But his real legacy isn't just plaques or championships, it's timing. Did Wild Bill Longson save professional wrestling? Not alone, no one person ever could. However, Longson played a tremendous role in keeping wrestling profitable, credible, and visible during one of the industry's most fragile eras. He maintained momentum when momentum mattered most, and when television arrived, wrestling was ready. Sometimes survival itself is a victory. Fans saw this in the mid-1990s when the WWF floundered, struggling to stay aloft against WCW. The product endured long enough to turn itself around, achieving an incredible resurgence. Such was the case with Wild Bill Longson, and by that measure, Longson's impact is impossible to ignore. Did you know about Wild Bill Longson's incredible legacy? Would you like to see more coverage from this era? Share your thoughts in the comment section, and let us know if there are any videos you'd like wrestling's greatest moments to cover. In the meantime, subscribe to our channel, follow us on X and Instagram, and spread the good news about wrestling's greatest moments. The channel that celebrates the squared circle.